Hello, everybody. This is Nanette Kennedy. I'm with the Evolution Revolution and Humanities team, and we are here at our weekly book group, and we are reading The Storm Before the Calm. And I'm going to turn it over to Linda, and she could tell us where we are and where we need to be. Take it away, Linda.
Okay. So, we're on conversation 5, which is on page 25. And I'm going to turn my video off. Okay. Okay, so the most daring thing that humanity could do right now. I'm not sure where this item originally came from, but somebody sent it to me in an email, and it articulates cleverly and perfectly what I'm saying here. Quote, an important job had to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought that anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. I've come here to invite you to decide right now not to do nothing. Choose to do something. I hope I'm not being too redundant when I say that life will not be the same when the overhaul of humanity is complete. Yet if we all do something, the changes will be for the better. Some souls will have left our planet, that is true, and we deeply honor them for their sacrifice of this present life on behalf of all of us. But most souls are going to stay on Earth in order to move evolution in this particular environment forward and to assist in dealing with the aftermath of events, doing so in such a way that the changes will be for the better. I don't personally believe there is much question about whether you and I will do something rather than nothing. You are ready, and so am I, to take up our positions, to hold up our end, to do our part. And we are in the majority. We all need to be given something to do. A lot of people just don't know what they can do, and so they assume there's nothing they can do. That's not true. Most of us are embracing doctrines that are simply not true. There's plenty of talk about, and that's all we really have to do. So it can be easy and fun. And there's more good news. You won't be alone. We are here, all of us who are involved in this conversation. And in just a little bit, I'll place on the table one possible way that we might leverage the fact that we are all together. When we can all ask together why are the conditions on our planet today the way they are? People are not asking why either, because they have asked the question many times before to no benefit, or worse, because they think they already have the answer. Some of them think that the answer has to do with the political doctrine of other people. If only people would embrace their political doctrine, everything would work out. Some of them think that the answer has to do with the religious doctrine of other people. If only people would embrace their religious doctrine, everything would work out. Some of them think that the answer has to do with an economic doctrine of other people. If only people would embrace their economic doctrine, everything would work out. All of them are wrong. The reason our species remains unable to create for all of us on Earth the life that we say we want for all of us on Earth is that most of us are embracing doctrines that are simply not true. This is what we need to stop doing. It is our cultural story that has to change. You've used that phrase, cultural story, now a number of times. Help me understand exactly what you're referring to. You're talking about our religions, right? Oh, much more than that. A cultural story is a very large tale that we tell our children and that they tell theirs of how it is, of who we are, of the way things work, and the purpose of it all. It's the story that was told to us and that was told to those who told it to us. It's the narration that we heard every day of our lives in one form or another. It is the passed down understanding. It is the inherited hypothesis. It is the standard supposition. It is the memory myth. It is a story that provides the foundation for our religions, as well as our political processes, our economic system, and all of our social interaction. It influences our lives at every level. Somebody's not muted. Hang on. Our courting. Okay, it influences our lives at every level. Our courting and relationship rituals, our sexual mores, our mating and marriage models, our parenting approaches, our conditions of friendship, everything. Precisely because this story is so pervasive, this is what we should be talking about. Yet it is what so many other people will not talk about. Why? I think because folks know that this is the real problem. Their story is the problem. Yet it is a story which is sacred to them, an oft-told tale to which they fiercely adhere and which they do not intend to relinquish or abandon. To do so would see them to be abandoning their ancestors, devaluing their traditions, dishonoring their history. A wonderful minister whose church I attended nearly 20 years ago, Reverend Terry Cole Whitaker, used to ask in her Sunday morning sermons, who would you have to make wrong in order for you to be right? She hit the bullseye with that question. People know that if they change their story, their group story, or even their individual story, they will have changed their minds about virtually everything of any importance that any person of any importance in their life has ever said. And they know that this will affect their sense of who they are, their idea of what is so, even their plans and strategies for where they are going. Such massive change is very difficult for people, many people, perhaps most people. Most would rather keep things as they are, even if things are not so good, than make a change, because change produces the unknown, and that which people do not know, they often fear. It is fear that stops most folks from changing. They may not like things the way they are, but at least they know what that is. And so conversations that clearly could lead to significant change have not been enthusiastically welcomed or well tolerated. It is fear that stops most folks from changing. To give a full answer, I think it's about more than just fear of the unknown. I think that many people know that if they really sat down together and objectively examined what they are repeating by rote to their children, they would see the folly in it. In a lot of what they would see, just how wrong they are, how off base they've been, how misguided and mistaken, and how incomplete their awareness is. Thus, humanity appears to be stuck, one conversation from paradise. We'll have to do what we've never done before. Imagine a single conversation that could change everything. Many people, perhaps most people, might never have that conversation unless they were gently encouraged to get into it. That's where you come in. This is God. But could one conversation possibly reveal or involve that could bring us to paradise? But what could one conversation possibly reveal or involve that could bring us to paradise? Well, it would be one conversation, but with many people. I'm saying that if hundreds of people, let's say thousands, many thousands, found themselves in the same conversation in their small social groups or church gatherings or family parties, whatever, or if many folks were suddenly talking about the same thing on social networking, internet sites, as an example, this single conversation with many people in many times and places could result in us ultimately and relatively quickly actually creating paradise on earth. I just have to say, oh my God, the timing of this is incredible. The seed of this idea was planted when I was sitting around sharing a quiet conversation with a handful of people who'd come to Ashland, Oregon, to spend 5 days with my wife and me at our house for an event that we call the Homecoming. Each year, a different small group, 6 to 10 people or so, gathers with us for 5 days, exploring life on a very personal level. It was August 2010 Homecoming that someone remarked about the sheer power of some questions I'd been posing during our discussions. I called them the 7 simple questions. The world should be invited to ask and answer these questions, someone exclaimed. Yes, I agreed. It sometimes seems to me that if we all just ran around asking these 7 simple questions, we'd be just one generation from paradise. The ring of that phrase hit all of us at once. After a stunned silence in the room, someone in the group, a man from Great Britain, said, Neil, that's something that should be said everywhere. You could start a global movement around that. And so we did. Those of us in that room did, right then and there. And when some of us came back together for a planning session a few months later, we decided that we were not one generation from paradise. We could easily be just one conversation from paradise. We simply needed to encourage everyone to have a simple conversation with as many others as they could, asking the 7 simple questions. Will asking 7 questions be enough? Out of that idea, we created what we called the Conversations Movement. The man from the UK, a chap named Steve Minchin, became its volunteer worldwide coordinator. And that, my friends, is how things happen. That's how things that change the world begin. I have to admit, though, that as good as the whole idea was feeling, I found myself asking what you just asked now. What could possibly be said in one conversation that could create an impact that would begin humanity's march to paradise? I mean, will asking 7 questions be enough? Upon deep reflection, here's what I realized. Yes, because those particular questions stimulate explorations of new ideas about who we are, about the real purpose of life, about who and what God is, and about our true relationship with each other. And because the purpose of such conversation would not be to marginalize, ridicule, or abandon old beliefs, but simply to invite the conversation of new ones. Yet to extend and accept such an invitation will take courage. Human beings have been willing to consider new ideas, even so-called heretical ideas, in virtually every important idea of human endeavor, except the most critical area of all, our most important personal and collective beliefs. In order to consider new beliefs, we would have to do what we have routinely done in science, in medicine, and in technology, but we have not had the courage to do in religion and in many manners of personal belief. We would have to be willing to question the prior assumption. This would be the single most daring thing that humanity could do right now. A formula that works. Change does not come easy in any field. As Max Planck, one of the fathers of quantum physics, once observed, quote, a new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. Or, as one more whimsically paraphrased, science advances one funeral at a time. Still, at least science eventually questions the basis on which a scientific conclusion was reached. And using this evidence, it one day comes up with even more answers, more brilliant solutions, more magnificent and miraculous outcomes. Likewise, when medicine comes up with an answer, those who engage in medicine in any serious way eventually question the basis on which that conclusion was reached. And using this device, they come up with even more answers, more brilliant solutions, more magnificent and miraculous outcomes. And so too it is in technology. This is a formula that works. Yet with regard to the answers that we derive from religion and from our other cultural beliefs, it doesn't matter how many funerals there have been. It doesn't matter how many generations have passed. People simply refuse to question the prior assumption. In fact, many have been known to declare that to do so is an act of apostasy. This is the great tragedy of humanity. This is the greatest stumbling block of our species. It is possible that all we think we know could be wrong. We have made breathtaking but unbelievable advances in technology, medicine, and science precisely because those who practice those disciplines have ultimately avoided this stumbling block, even if it did take time. Over decades and centuries, they have been willing to make one key statement that most people who are officially associated with religions or cultural beliefs dare not make. It is possible that all we think we know could be wrong. At the very least, it could be incomplete. If humanity would engage in a global conversation about our religions, our beliefs, and our cultural story that began with this key statement, that conversation would result in new ideas that could produce new solutions that would make the advances that we've seen in medicine and science and technology look like child's play. We would create the life for which we have dreamed, the outcomes for which we were destined, and the human experience for which we were designed. Many people are actually producing this outcome for themselves individually right now, in the present moment. If they all simply started talking about it, they could spread this outcome to our entire species within one generation, one conversation at a time. So yes, I think it would be wonderful for all of us to talk. Let me put it more urgently. I think we need to talk. Not quarrel, not argue, not fight, not contradict or debate or dispute or wrangle. Just converse, speaking with gentle passion, listening with an open mind, sharing with a tolerant and tender heart, exploring with a generous spirit, and concluding with a willing invitation to not let the conversation end, but to talk and share again as part of an ongoing exchange that need never end. Humanity can create, if it so chooses, a new cultural story, a fresh set of beliefs about who we are and why we are here and what is really so about each other and about life. And yes, even a new, or to put it better way, an enlarged set of beliefs about God, so that divinity can finally be rendered functional and not merely doctrinal. The role you were destined to play. We took an earlier look at the role that human beings have played in bringing about our present circumstance. I also spoke of the role we play right now in bringing about a change in those circumstances more quickly. Now I want to say something daring about that. It is a role I believe you have come here to play. You have come here to physical form, to this place called Earth, at this particular and critical time in history, to participate in the evolution of our species. I realize that this may sound grandiose, yet I believe deeply that it's true. This is not the only reason you are here, of course. You came here for reasons having to do with your own evolution, your own experience. Yet the more of the latter you achieve, the more of the former you desire, for you realize ultimately that they are one and the same. But let's talk about it. Let's see what's in your head about this. Do you believe that you arrived here at this time by accident? Do you think that the events occurring all around you are somehow out of sequence? Do you imagine that things are happening that should not be happening? Do you hold the idea that your timing of your life upon the earth during these crucial passages is a coincidence? Is it your thought that the impeccable synchronization of your arrival with the arrival of this moment is by chance? Let me know. Engage in this conversation. We're talking about it now at www.theglobalconversation.com. Here's my own thought about it. No, that is not how life works. In life, nothing happens by chance. Life proceeds out of your intentions for it, even your intentions before birth. You have a soul. You are much more than simply a body with a mind. And life for you extends far beyond the limits of your present physical incarnation. If you do not believe this, you may find it difficult to easily or comfortably embrace the idea that part of your journey on Earth is to assist in the evolution of your species. Such an agenda will feel huge, out of reach, beyond your ability, but it is not. You are very capable, very able to offer the gentle assistance life invites you to provide right now. And if you're willing to offer it, you could truly, I'm going to say this again, help to change the world. Points I hope you'll remember. If we all agree not to do nothing during the overhaul of humanity, coming changes will be for the better. Most people are embracing doctrines that are simply not true. Because our cultural story, which contains those doctrines, is so pervasive, we need to be talking about it. We could be just one conversation from paradise if enough of us had that conversation and ignited it with others. You are destined to play a role in the evolution of our species. Action I hope you'll take. Decide to learn all that you can about our old cultural story and what it's been telling us so you can discuss it with others. Contribute to the writing of proposals for our new cultural story by going to www.theglobalconversation.com. Begin conversations everywhere you go in gentle, congenial way about both the old story and the new, especially about the 7 simple questions, which we will discuss here soon. End of conversation.
Thank you. Anybody like to start?
Yes, I
knew it was going to be you. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it.
I don't like to surprise you, Nanette. That's the only reason.
Okay, well, surprise is over.
No, you're not surprised, are you?
No.
Yeah, so that's why I did it.
Go for it, my friend.
There's no synchronicities, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so I'm just confirming that. Here's what I want to say. Thank you very much for the counseling. I'm very grateful. Now you may start the conversation. Oh, by the way, I was just amazed at how everyone jumped in. It was quite a discussion starter, wasn't it?
Yes. No. Yes.
Well, I was going to jump in, but Shabana beat me to it. What I was reminded of was I used to, when I was young, I had all those buttons, like you put them all over your backpack so everybody knows who you are and what you think about everything. And one of the buttons I had was question authority, which is a thing that I have been doing from a very young age, including in, catechism at my Catholic catechism class and with my mother related to religion. A lot of it just never sat well with me to just take things on faith that didn't feel right in my body. And I guess there are people who don't have that and just accept it all. And I remember when I was young, I kind of wished I was like that. Like, I wish I could just have blind faith. People would say, like, if you don't believe in God and it's true, you're screwed. But if you do believe in God and it's not true, you're safe. So just believe, right? But it's like you can't just believe if you don't believe. And God would know the truth. He would know if I was lying. Anyway, that's kind of a tangent. That's what I really resonated with, was that whole question authority and, the cultural stories need to be examined. And then you go back to the idea from other books of does it work or not. Our cultural stories that we're passing down and people are swallowing whole are really not working. And that's what, we're seeing big time in this country. Yes, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with what you say. And the cultural stories, I mean, if we look back a couple generations, even perhaps one generation, um, we can hear those cultural stories within our families and nearby friends or grandparents. Um, I need to think about this more.
I'm the opposite of you, Mary. I absolutely believe everything all the time. Doesn't matter what it is. You tell me a story, I'm all in. So you change your story, I'm all in. Doesn't matter to me. Whatever it is, I'm all in.
I think the difference with me is I'm on investigating it. I'm not, I just won't believe something. And I have a gauge, which isn't always right. It's a broken gauge sometimes. But I have a gauge where I just think that something feels funny there or it feels good. And Wayne Dyer used to do this thing where he would have people put their arms straight out, raised by their sides, and you need somebody else to do this. And if it feels good, you're not going to be able to let him press your arm downward. But if you're having questions about it, it'll be easy for somebody else to press your arm downward. And I have a little person I have following me. Did I say, okay, it's time for you to press my arm? I'm just kidding. Um, you do have to have someone around you, and um, it's worked a lot for me. Over.
That's muscle testing, and there is a way to do it with yourself with like your fingers, but I've never found it work that well. But another way to do that is just the feeling in your body thing, like is it a yes or is it a no? And what it is if it's a yes, you kind of move forward a little tiny bit. And if it's a no, you kind of retract a little bit. And that's a way where you can do that for yourself without having someone there to push on your arms. Because that's a handy tool to have that I've actually shared with a lot of people. The other thing I wanted to say was, yeah, you're welcome. With regard to Shabana and like you believe everything, it's like if you told me a story, I would believe you. But the cultural stories of like religion and stuff like that, I'm very skeptical about. Mostly because they did not feel right to me. Like if you read in the Bible and like women are like wrong and bad compared to men, you know, and like we're supposed to cover our heads in shame. I mean, there's a lot of crap in there that just, you know, when I was like 10 or 11 or 12 years old, I'm like, I can't buy this stuff, you know? Um, and my mom was like, as long as you believe in Jesus, it's okay, honey. But, you know, that's what I'm talking about. I believe anything you told me or Nanette told me or anyone on, you know, I believe people. And sometimes that gets you in trouble because I have been like scammed by some guy on the street once when I was young. But anyway, I just want to say there's a difference there for me between who because I do tend to believe humans for the most part. Maybe I'm getting a little more, because you know nowadays all the stuff is coming out where people are buying into these crappy scenarios and like you know white people sharing the thing from the one black person who will tell you why Black Lives Matter is wrong and you know like sharing the one thing that confirms their own bias instead of using a brain to look at like what a lot of people are saying and all the different voices. I'm going to shut up now. I love you guys.
That's very helpful what you just said, Mary. When I spoke about believing everything, I meant every single religious belief. And I have been scammed for sure by people too on the street. Like one time, I was at a cash machine and a man told me a sad, sad story. So I took all my money out and gave it to him. You know, like that's not a problem. Whatever. It didn't kill me. But what I'm saying about various religions, the one religion that is absolutely impossible is Christianity because there's only one way, that's Jesus. And like you said, your mom told you, don't worry about it as long as you believe in Jesus, which means that every Christian I've ever met has either tried to convert me or told me that I was going to, you know, the hot place. So that's the only religion that I find is really a hard one. But I embraced it because I think it's a great religion. I love the story. So yep, Jesus is the Son of God. I believe it 100%, but I also believe in every other religion 100%.
Well, I
But
believe that. Sorry.
go ahead.
I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, but I don't think Jesus meant he's the Son of God and he's the only one. He meant we're all the kids of God, you know? I mean, I think Jesus was a great teacher and his teachings have been very twisted and there's lots of reasons behind that. But as far as that thing where you're talking about you believe all the religions, I've said, you know, what if they're all true just for I believe that it's all a piece of it, you know? Like that idea that spirituality is the ocean and each religion scoops up a certain amount of the ocean. And I've also thought, what if what people believe is true for them? So if Christians believe that you're going to go to the hot, fiery place if you're bad or wrong, then you do. But that doesn't mean that you or I do, because we don't believe that necessarily. Well, maybe you do. Oh, anyway, um, yeah. When you said that about all religions, I thought that was funny, because it's yet another thing that we kind of share in common, of just being like, well, they can all be true. I don't have to resolve any contradictions. That's not my job. That's God's job.
Don't tell Sarah that. Were you going to say something, Sarah? That's why I said that. It looks like you're going to say something.
No, I wasn't. I was just quietly listening.
If I ever tell a Christian that I believe in all the religions, they're not my friend anymore.
I think, Siobhan, that one way you can avoid that is to say, I believe that every religion holds truths. And I did my undergraduate studies in world religions. And we probably didn't study every religion, but we studied a lot of them. And I could understand and agree with a lot of what was going on. It was amazing to me how much there actually is in common between world religions. They're not identical, but they cross over a lot. Over.
Yes, they do. And the thing Shabana says is absolutely true. Christians think you're going to go to hell, however, for whatever reason. Like if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. I was not raised with that tradition. I was raised in the Roman Catholic Church, a little different. But, I have a cousin who I'm very close to. We are April, May, June, July, 3 months apart in birth, and so we've been friends since birth, basically. And she's very Christian. She lives the good parts of Christianity. She's very loving and kind and generous and cares about people, and is not the reactionary kind of Christian who wants to, I don't know. But she still does believe that I'm going to hell. We had that conversation a couple of years ago when I said, I was at a thing with her kind of accidentally. And I said, there's a lot that I agree with what that guy was saying, but where I have an issue is that idea that I'm right and everybody else is wrong. And she said, well, I guess that's what faith is. I do believe that I'm right and everybody else is wrong. And I was like, so you do believe that I'm going to hell? And she was like, yeah. I mean, she didn't just say it like that, but and I was like, she said it's really hard because like our other cousin who she lives with, who's an atheist, I think, it's like she's even worse than me. I believe in a higher power, but like, she had to kind of grapple with it and then just went, well, that's God's business, not my business. It's like, I can't imagine believing in a God who I believe is sending people I love who have done nothing, I mean, we've all done wrong things, but basically kind-hearted people, generous people, loving people are going to hell because they don't believe in you in the particular way that you demand. It's nuts. And a lot of people do believe it. Over.
Mary, that's really interesting, because I just wonder if you think things are starting to change, because there's a woman who comes to my meditation group. She's a shaman, but she's also a Christian pastor. And the people in her shamanic group have real issues with her Christianity, and the people in her Christian circle have real issues with her shamanism. But she put a notice on her door during lockdown saying, on Wednesday, I'm going to be having a silent day, and it's for everybody from all backgrounds and beliefs. And everybody was okay with it. nobody made any negative comments. So I'm just wondering if you think it's starting to change over.
I mean, yes and no. I think that there are a lot of people who are more open than there used to be. And I live in the United States where there are still quite a lot of these fundamentalist Christians who are very, um, you know, militant about it, let's say. You know, my cousin is not the kind of person who's putting it out there, and she doesn't believe that like gay people are going to burn in hell for being gay or whatever. I mean, she's an inclusive kind of Christian, but definitely still believes that if you don't, you know, believe in Christ as your savior, you're screwed. She just believes it quietly and doesn't, you know, spread it around. She never would have told me that she felt that way about me if I hadn't had that conversation with her, you know? So, it's, yeah. So, yeah, I definitely think a lot is changing. It just takes time. It's that thing in the book that I think a lot of it is people have to die off and give the world over to the people who are more open to things.
Okay, I can change. I can share something, and I
Yes.
also studied comparative religions and on the university because I was interested, because I had spiritual experiences when I was young and my whole childhood and so on, and I couldn't relate it to one religion. It was a conscious state, a state that I was looking for and couldn't find. I found it when I found about mysticism. I read in when I was studying comparative religions, and I found a place where they wrote about research being done on mystics, that they had an experience of the oneness or divinity, and it didn't matter if they had it, whatever religion they were in, they understood each other over these differences. But if they hadn't had this experience, they didn't understand each other. And I can see that that's a big separation. And then I wonder, it's going on because I'm reading through a lot of my own writing since many years back. I'm going through, and I'm surprised how much I have been writing about of this spirituality. I wonder if Neil have ever said anything about Kundalini experiences, because in many cultures and all cultures, and so this awakening of the Kundalini, no matter what you call it, it has been so misunderstood in Western countries. But if you go deeper, that is an energy that awakens the inner state of human beings. And because I've had so many such experiences, and I have written so much about it. And when you read this book now about holding back and not communicate, because I'm not really communicating about it, and it is like, oh no, it will be misunderstood and I will look crazy and so on, because that's. But have Neil Donald Welsh at any place written about Kundalini? If you know that, you can let me know, because I would like to know, because I think he's so many things he's saying is so good. So anyway, but I believe that beyond that separation, that is that level where we have to meet and share, and if we do that, there will be a big change. There is no other way. That's my absolute, yeah. So how we do it, I don't know exactly. I'm curious about these 7 questions, but I haven't turned up yet. So, yeah. Thank you for listening. Over.
I haven't read everything that Neil's written, but I've read, I think, almost everything. And I'm not, I can't remember any discussion ever about Kundalini. But what I wanted to share is that I really think that part of this conversation that we're going to be having is about the realization that we're not our bodies, that our bodies are this housing that we're inhabiting, but our bodies have a collective and an ancestral memory, right, that spans beyond just this physical life that we're in. And so what's happening to people is when they're getting triggered by things that are not necessarily even in this lifetime. It's like it's a collective memory that's being triggered. And so I had an experience last week that I just wanted to share because I think it's a really good example of what I'm trying to describe. I happened to be at the post office, and if I've shared this story already, stop me. But I was at the post office, and a trooper came in, and he had everything on. You know, he had his bulletproof vest, and he had his gun, and his all that stuff, the radio, all that stuff. And what I observed in myself was an impulse to run away. Like this guy all of a sudden represented fear to me. Like like I didn't feel safe. It was the complete opposite of what he would have expected me to be feeling, right? They think that they're there to protect and serve, and that's the you know, that's the mindset that they're walking around with. And yet my unconscious reaction was one of fear when I saw him. And it was interesting because I just stood there and witnessed what was happening in myself. So my body's wanting to like run away, and I've got the keys in my hand to go check my PO box, and I cannot make myself take steps in that direction. I was just rooted in fear in that moment. And I just saw, all right, just breathe, Linda, just breathe. And I was able to breathe my way through it, and I was able to realize what was happening, and I was able to go and check my box, and I didn't run away screaming with my hair on fire, you know, but that's how I felt. And I think that because we don't teach children that that they inhabit a body, that they're not their body, we have a whole population on this planet that doesn't understand what's happening to them. And I think that this is part of this conversation that we're going to start having with each other. Over.
Yes, there's someone who I read like an interview with who um, does presentations actually to white people about diversity stuff, and what he was talking about is that it's like the generational trauma. And I guess with epigenetics, I haven't really Googled yet, but you know, we store the trauma of previous generations. And so, you know, people look and think that Black people might be overreacting in some sense, but it's not just what's happening in this lifetime, which is bad enough, but it's like hundreds of years of Black people being treated the way they've been treated, and all of that fear and trauma is in their tissues, and we have our own white trauma, because that's one of the things he talked about was the whole concept of race didn't really exist in the way it does now until like the 1600s. And it was like before that it was merchants and landowners were the one with the power. And then because the poor people, Black and white, and you know, whatever poor people, were sort of banding together. So to divide and conquer, they made this concept, and at least if you're white, you still have certain rights compared with other people of other colors. But so there's the trauma also of being the poor. You know, it's not like poor white people have always had it easy either. And there's been a lot of violence against them. And then that's part of what, you know, we all have you know, and I'm looking at Shabana, and I know that you're not black or white, but you have your own you know, your own trauma of your own people, you know, because we know there's plenty to go around, trauma of all kinds of people, you know, killing each other. We all have that story, and it gets triggered, like Linda said. And, you know, really what we need to do is educate ourselves. Like Linda said, in the moment, when you feel the reaction, recognizing what's going on. Just wait a moment and see. And I'm done.
That
Thank
was
you.
really powerful. Thank you very much, Mary. Yes, very powerful. I'm going to do the meditation with it. And Nanette and Linda, is it okay if I do the meditation?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right.
Let me just say one thing before you do that. So what we're seeing now is a collective grief, right? Our entire society has a collective grief that has been triggered now, because that 8.46 minute video is the thing that sparks this conversation. And in that 8.5 to 3/4 of a minute video, it's triggered this collective grief that we've all lived with. All the times that we've witnessed something that we knew wasn't right, but felt powerless to deal with. All of that is being brought to the surface for healing. And the most important thing that we can do is to embrace being uncomfortable. Don't run away from it. Push into it. Because it is only when we work through this discomfort that we get to the paradise that Neil is talking about here. I'm complete. Take it away, Shabana.
God of mercy and love, thank you for this meeting now, where we are discussing how we can create heaven on earth. Each of us is an individuation of God, so the amount of power and peace we have is unlimited. And our responsibility right here, right now, is to recognize that the hearts of Linda, Nanette, Sarah, Bima, Mary, and Shabana are now joined. We have pooled our power to recognize that for the sake of humanity and for the sake of Gaia, we have taken on the courageous task of running into the fire to save the baby. The baby is humanity itself. We are the critical mass, and the baby is Gaia. Our home planet is suffering because of what's been done to her. There's only one of us around. We're all in this together. The victims and the perpetrators, George Floyd and the 4 policemen who helped him transition, are the same. Whatever we do to someone is done to us. We're in this together, and it's your mercy that'll heal it. It's your glue of love and grace that we're inviting. And we're doing this confidently. We are put here now to pray this prayer, to meditate together, because our will is paradise, heaven on earth, here now. We invite it, we've got it, we thank you, amen. All right, everyone.
Thank you, Shabana.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Anna. Wonderful.
Yes, thank you, Shabana. It's very nice.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Everybody have a wonderful rest of the weekend and
Yeah.
have a great day and love you all. We'll see each other next time.
Love you all. Thank you all.
Much
Good.
love.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.